My name is Bob Roth, and I'm your host of Health Futures Taking Stock in You. Cooney was on just last week, Director of Community Engagement from Hospice of the Valley. Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and on the World Wide Web at moneyradio1510.com.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures. I'm your host, Bob Roth. And, of course, it's Friday, July the 14th. We're midway through the month of July, and we're certainly in the dog days of summer. And if you're just tuning into this show for the very, very first time, this show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. Health Futures is the name, and the tagline is Taking Stock in You. And we can be found right here on Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and on the World Wide Web at moneyradio1510.com. And what makes this show isn't so much me, the host, it's the guest I bring to the show. And today is no different. It's a name and a voice that many of our listening audience know, especially if you live here in Phoenix. And I know we're picked up all across the world. Cooney from Hospice of the Valley is here in the studio with me. She's the Director of Community Engagement, and some of you may know her from Channel 12 News. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I think it's funny that you said dog days of summer because I just met your sweet, sweet dog in the studio who also is a therapy dog, which is so precious to all of us at Hospice of the Valley.
Well, thank you. And, many of you don't know this. Linsu did a story on Lacey, that's our yellow lab, about 5 years ago.
When she was just a pup?
She was just a pup and used to do this hero segment. And I know that this hero segment ran for over 10 years. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the premise behind it was to honor the people that serve our country. And then it morphed itself to people serving the community and others that really do such good in our community. And we were so privileged that you did that piece on Lacey, and Lacey makes a difference in so many of the older adults' lives that she goes to visit.
Oh, yeah, and I hope we get a chance to talk about pet therapy in more detail, but it truly is. Yeah, that series was to honor everyday heroes who are doing extraordinary things out of kindness, serving others, just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And,
I talk about it a lot on the show. It truly does take a village.
Yeah.
And these are the village people that do those. They go the extra mile to help make a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah, and this is a great community for that because there are so many generous people.
So many generous people that don't get the recognition, and they don't do it for the recognition.
Correct.
But they really make a difference. And speaking of making a difference, you have shifted your career.
Haven't I?
And I think the number was you spent about 30 years, right, in public broadcasting?
I was 31 years at Channel 12, but 34 years in the business.
34 years in the business.
Yeah.
Wow. And you came into people's homes, like my family's homes, every evening.
Well, thank you.
And I felt like that you were part of our family.
Well, it's a choice because there's so many choices out there.
Sure.
And even I sit and watch with a remote in my hand and go back and forth. So thank you for watching all those years. It was a privilege. It was an amazing career. Loved every second of it. It was unpredictable,
right,
exciting, rewarding. But, there comes a season in everyone's life where they're ready for a new challenge and a new mission. And gosh, those women at 12 were probably thinking, is she ever going to leave? Do we ever get a chance to sit in that chair? So it really was someone else's turn. And I was happy to let someone else have that turn. And I am so thrilled to be serving with Hospice of the Valley now.
Well, I love that. And, I will remark that I have a friend of mine whose wife served in the broadcasting business, and I know you have 4 children. And many people don't realize the sacrifice that you had to make to be there to do what you did and miss the meal time, miss the games, and miss the recitals and all the things that come along with that.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but I think, there are a lot of working women and working dads who share that if they have a non-traditional career that doesn't go 8 to 5. And even that kind of career, you're making sacrifices. So it was difficult. I was lucky in that I had been there so long and I had moved very close to the station and was able to take a dinner break where I did see my kids.
Nice.
But you think about it. They get up in the morning and go to school. They come home and I'm at work. I rush home for dinner, then I go back to work and they go to bed, and I see them briefly in the morning. And the cycle was very difficult until the weekends rolled around, and very often news happens on the weekend, or public events that we needed to be at happen on the weekend. So it is a sacrifice. I think it's important sometimes women feel guilty for things like, I shouldn't have this fabulous career, but we all raise our daughters to be able to achieve their dreams and have the same fulfillment that we want our sons to have. So I don't regret being a model for having a passion in the,
Sure.
But at the same time, it's a juggling act and a balancing act. And with my children, the 2 youngest now being in high school, wanted those 4 last years to be where I could be at home with them. So it was time to make a change.
And I know you made the change because it was something that was filling your passion bucket. And, one of the things for me, I made a change as well, and our listening audience knows this. I came from the consumer product goods world, and I got into this business because of being a caregiver for my mother. And having that experience and being a caregiver and knowing that I could help other people's moms and dads fueled my passion to jump into this business. And I know you have a story, and it's, while it might be a little bit different than mine, I know that something fueled your passion to get into this hospice world.
Well, I had not really been exposed to hospice. I'd heard of it until 2003 when my father-in-law suffered what is called an aortic dissection. His aorta had started to tear from his heart. He was rushed to the hospital, had the surgery, and he did survive the surgery. The heart was repaired, but there were some strokes. And he went on to hospice. And Hospice of the Valley came in and helped us understand what was happening, helped us bring him home out of the hospital where he would not have wanted to stay, back into his home where he felt comfortable. We gave him a dignified, loving ending to a beautiful, dignified life. The whole family kind of moved into my mother-in-law's house, and we were there. And he felt surrounded in his last days by everyone in the family in a place that he felt the most comfortable. And it was such a gift, not only to him, but to everyone in our family. I was blown away. No idea the compassion that hospice brings into your home. And it's a whole team of people.
Right.
It is a whole team of people. And then there's bereavement afterwards if you need that for up to a year or more, because everyone knows that first year anniversary is very difficult. So it's a lot of support and understanding. And these people, I know they don't like to be called angels, but Bob, I really think there's an angel component to their DNA, the way they are made up. They want to serve others, and this is a difficult journey, and they make that journey easier.
I've been around it, and I've seen it. I liken it to the same joy and privilege that that you find nurses and clinicians in giving birth to babies, helping people in that end journey. I mean, they love helping those families. And I say families because it's more than the individual.
Yes.
Because there are so many emotions that are going on. And you guys, and I say you guys, Hospice of the Valley and people that work in this space, just have that ability to connect and help people get through those really difficult times.
Yeah, it's just meeting them where they are, because everyone is in a different place and family dynamics are always different. But the need to not be alone, to understand what is happening, and how to heal from the heartrending grief of losing someone you love with all your heart. We all have to face that because none of us lives forever, but it is so much more difficult to try and go that road alone.
It is.
And not have the support. So.
And you brought up something very important, and I know Hospice of the Valley does this very well, is that 1 year, that they stay connected to the family through that first year because they know how difficult it is. And that is such a trying time. I mean, that loss, that grief, and everybody grieves very differently.
Yeah.
And I've worked with the social workers at Hospice of the Valley, and I've had them contact the families. And especially, and we can talk about this in later segments, you know, hospice isn't just for older adults. It happens to kids. And,
yes.
And the other part is, even when it does happen to older adults, children are affected by it. And you guys have, we'll use the village term, you have this village of people that really can help comfort and help these people through this journey. And I'm talking about kids dealing with grief and sorrow of losing someone. Yeah,
New Song Center for Grieving Children is an amazing resource, and I hope we do get to talk about that because children grieve differently than adults. You know, you talked earlier about the beginning of life journey and how that's so beautiful and dignified and how the end of life should also be that. Our care actually starts with our perinatal program, which there's no other program like it in the state, before a baby's born. So if you are an expectant couple and you go in to get an ultrasound with your wife and the doctor gives you the worst news you've ever wanted to hear, your baby's not expected to survive birth, we have a program that I can hear the music starting. We can talk about later.
We have about 30 seconds.
Okay,
but go ahead.
It's an amazing program that supports you because say you don't want to terminate, you want to give birth to your baby, hold your baby, love your baby, say goodbye to your baby. You need someone to support you and understand you and then help you get through the grief after because you're grieving the whole time.
Exactly.
And then when you have another child, all those feelings come out again.
I want to talk more about that when we come back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and I've got Lynn-Sue Cooney from Hospice of the Valley here in the studio with us. We're talking about hospice, not just for older adults. We're talking about children as well. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're on segment number 2. And if you're just tuning in, I've got Lynn-Sue Cooney. She's the Director of Community Engagement for Hospice of the Valley. And if you missed the first segment, you can catch it up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, drop down to the radio show button, and you can click on this show today, and you can click on about 160 or 70 others we've been bringing to you for the last 4.5 years. So when we left off on our first segment, we were talking about the tragic nature of loss, and especially when it is dealing with children. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that Hospice of Valley is so much more than just hospice for older adults. It's not just about old people dying. And, you know, I had Susan Levine here in the studio about 2 years ago, almost to this day. And, you know, one of the things that she said is so perfectly well said. You know, people conceive hospice as a place. And people think of it as, you know, you go to a hospice. Hospice is a concept. It's not a place. And 99% of people in our community die at home.
They're cared for at home.
So, and that's what they want.
Yeah, well,
just like your father-in-law
Wouldn't
did.
you want that?
Absolutely.
So think about it. Hospice actually comes from the word hospitality. What do you do when you're being hospitable? You make someone comfortable in your home.
Exactly.
So really it isn't a place. It's a philosophy of care where you're embraced by a team that addresses all your emotional, your social, and your medical needs, and your spiritual needs as well.
Right. Spiritual needs is a big part of it because you guys have many chaplains. You have rabbis and you have priests.
And non-denominational, everything. You know, no matter what your faith is, if you desire spiritual comfort,
just make a call. Just tell your representative, the social worker or
tell
the
your
clinician
team,
is there.
and we
say, I'd like to see somebody. And
exactly. And, you're talking about hospice being there for people at end of life. The wonderful thing about Hospice of the Valley, that when I came there, I realized no one knows this because they are so dedicated and to the care. That's all they think about 24/7 is patient and family.
Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking about telling the community all the services that are available, many of them no cost, because as a nonprofit, not only do we not turn anyone away and have not in 40 years who needs care, regardless of whether they have Medicare or any kind of insurance, Hospice of the Valley will care for you at end of life. Regardless of that, there are all kinds of community programs that are free, no cost to the community, whether or not you are a patient of Hospice of the Valley, because we're a nonprofit and we don't pay stockholders. We take that money and reinvest it in the community. So $10 million of charity care programs every year.
Every year.
Yes.
And I know that you guys have done a super job building an incredible foundation, one of the largest here in the state. And, I always, we get a chance, and for our listening audience, because we provide caregivers in the home, we're kind of like the first phase of somebody's journey that needs some assistance. And then typically, if they are suffering from an illness or a disease, we layer on home health, and then we introduce hospice. And it is remarkable for us to see that happen, because when hospice comes in, we don't go away.
Oh, no, it's a partnership.
We work together,
yes.
and it's really, really nice. Even at end of life, and I can tell you this, Linsu, which is really beautiful, is that, at the very, very end, we're still in the household, keeping the household going, and the family is doing what they need to do, and that is visit with their loved one.
Yeah,
they don't have to worry about laundry. They don't have to worry about the kitchen. They don't have to worry about meals. All of that is being taken care of, so they can be with the one they love.
Yeah, they can be present. And that is a gift to give to families, that they have no regrets about the beautiful way that their loved one leaves this world. So it's such a gift. But these charity care programs, what I love about it is every time I go and speak to the community about all the programs that we do that are not end of life, all I see is a room full of people with their jaws dropping. We didn't know you had dementia care.
Right.
So our dementia care program
I'm glad you came over to dementia.
It's the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah, I love this. Can we talk about Mary Beth? I mean,
sure,
because she's a rock star.
She is my hero.
Yeah, she really is.
She's our director of our dementia program.
Right.
And this program was created because we all know somebody with dementia, and the numbers are steeply increasing in coming years, and we're not ready as a community, as a society, to deal with that. And we don't want to warehouse people, right, in institutions and in memory care units that, we want them to be engaged. We want them to stay at home as long as they can and have loved ones care for them. So we have a dementia educator come into your home. They teach you what to expect. You talk about medications, what works, what harms. Why are these behaviors happening? Why is he or she acting like this? How do I make life meaningful for someone who doesn't respond and may not speak anymore? So let me give you an example. Ethel's taking care of John. John wants to go on a walk at 2 a.m. Ethel says, honey, we have to go back to bed. John knows he wants to go for a walk, opens the door. Ethel's standing in the way trying to block it, falls down, breaks her hip. Mm-hmm. Their whole life is destroyed. She goes to the hospital.
The caregiver. The family caregiver,
right,
gone.
He goes to a memory care unit. Now he doesn't know where Ethel is or his home. Are either one of them going to do well?
Right.
So if she knew, my dementia educator told me to say, let's go for a walk, but first have a cookie and some hot chocolate while I go get my shoes. John will forget.
Exactly.
He has dementia. If he doesn't forget, she goes in and can call 24/7 and get more strategies to distract. And the next day, our medical director calls and says, what are his medicines? Why is he up at 2 a.m? Let's fix that. Because then if he sleeps, Mabel sleeps.
I love it.
And then we also have volunteers who are specially trained. They go in the home and they give Mabel a break. So she's not on duty 24/7. She can go have lunch with a friend or just go take a nap. So it's a beautiful program that really, they're never alone, 24/7 nurse line. They're not stuck at 2 a.m. going, I don't know what to do. So it's a beautiful, beautiful program. Some families just get on it for a couple months
Right.
till they learn strategies on how to engage and enrich. You know, if you were a caregiver your whole life, maybe we teach you to give your mom a lifelike baby doll. And mom, who used to stare at the wall for 10 hours a day, now plays with the baby, feeds the baby, burps the baby, has a reason and interacts and has moments of lucidity, and you get your mom back.
I love it. And you have no idea the chord you struck with me. And we talked about this at one of the Hospice of the Valley events. You know, at Cypress HomeCare, just 2 years ago, we pivoted and we have a dementia care program. And we do a lot of the same things. Michelle Toff, who's been on our show, she's got 22 years experience in dementia world. And what she does, like you said, we got to be in their world, not our world. And that, and redirecting and just building those skills for that family caregiver. You know, Lindsay, you probably know the statistic. AARP tells us that 65-year-olds caring for one another, 63% of the time, the caregiver predeceases the care recipient.
Because there's no support.
And it's so important. The family caregiver is the unsung hero out there. And as I've said here on the show, you know, we all know people that are doing the caregiving role. If we recognize somebody being a caregiver, don't ask to help, do. And the analogy or the situation I gave to people is that if you're cooking a casserole, cook two.
Yes.
And deliver that second casserole to your friend that you know is a caregiver that could benefit from that, so she or he doesn't have to worry about cooking a meal.
And that's a gift to you. How good does that make you feel that you've helped someone?
It's halftime here at Health Futures. We're up against a break. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And we're on segment number 3. And if you are just tuning in, I have got Lindsay Cooney, who many know from her days at Channel 12 as a broadcast anchor, who is now with Hospice of the Valley. She's the Director of Community Engagement, and we had an incredible first 2 segments, and if you missed them, you can catch them up on our website at cypresshomecare.com, and click on the media button, hit the drop down to the radio button, and you can catch this show and many, many more. So, Lindsay, you were talking about the end of the second segment about all these programs that you have. And we were talking about pet therapy. We were talking about the support that we give to grieving families. You know, being a not-for-profit, giving away $10 million worth of services a year gives you that ability to just help so many and leave an impression, a lasting impression on so many. We ended up that last segment talking about dementia programs, and you and I are going to get together after the show talking about how we can collaborate together, because dementia is growing so fast and so rapidly. And, you know, I've had many people from the Banner Alzheimer's Institute here on our show. I've had Marwan Sabah from Barrows Neurological Institute here on the show. And we've talked about the fact that this isn't an epidemic, it's pandemic.
Yeah.
And we're talking about in 2050 there being 15 million Americans plagued with this disease, and we're also talking about it costing our economy about $1.4 trillion a year. And we talked about at the end of the segment, in segment 2, about the family caregiver, and that is the hardest, because you and I know that those people that are going through the journey are cared for. It's those families that are grieving, and they're grieving a loss where the individual's still there. And they're saying to me, and they're saying to you, but Dad or Mom that is a vessel of the person you used to know, and that's hard to grasp.
It's death by degrees. It's very difficult for the caregiver to see someone disappear that they love so much, and not sure that they're meeting all of their needs. So that dementia program I mentioned does help you anticipate and understand, why is there agitation? Well, maybe the TV's too loud. Maybe the content on the TV is disturbing. Maybe the room is too cold. Maybe they're hungry. So these are all things that this dementia program does. And the most beautiful thing about Hospice of the Valley is that charity care. There are so many different programs. We have a salutes program that recognizes veterans in our community who are on hospice care with other veteran volunteers who go in and give them a special recognition with a pin and give the family a flag and give them that gift of companionship, veteran to veteran. We have mindfulness meditation. So we talk about caregiver stress. That meditation we've found really can reduce the health problems, the depression, the sadness, the exhaustion that caregivers experience, and keep them healthy. We have massage therapy, which helps our patients who have swelling and all kinds of other issues. If they're comfortable, they have less medication and they're less pain. All kinds of volunteer programs. We have 2,000 volunteers. So
2,000 volunteers.
Okay, they outnumber our employees. 1,400 employees, but a force of 2,000.
And you know what? I've met many of the volunteers, and these volunteers, many of them have had loved ones go through this journey with Hospice of the Valley, and they were so touched, not too dissimilar from you, from what happened with your father-in-law, and they were so touched that they said, you know what, I want to come aboard to help.
And they can do everything from bake cookies.
Right.
If they don't want to visit patients, some visit patients and they give that caregiver a break. Some of them go and get beach towels, put a slit in the middle, which we need every year. We sew binding tape around and we turn them into ponchos. And those are bathing ponchos to preserve the dignity of our modest hospice patients.
I love
that
that.
Can be kept clean, or dementia patients who don't like to be undressed.
I love that.
So there are all kinds of things they make greeting cards. They provide pet therapy, which is what me and my standard poodle do. We go into dementia care units.
What's his name?
Max. And he
cool.
absolutely. So we walk in and all these people immediately come alive. It's Max. Max is back.
It's amazing.
Brings such joy.
You know, and one of the programs that Mary Beth runs is the music program.
Yes.
And you know, you have a harpist who plays and can play in the home, but you also, we talked about hospice being in the home, but one of the things that Hospice of the Valley has is got some incredible inpatient units.
Yes, 10 of them.
Yes, and the two that I know very well right here in our backyard are the Sherman House, which is right there connected to the Mayo Clinic Hospital, and then the other one is right down the street here at the Eckstein unit. And then, you know, music therapy can be brought into the home, which is just phenomenal. It really is. And to watch what it does to people, especially when and there was a great movie that was done, and Hospice of the Valley rented out back in the day when it was the Harkins down by Camelview.
Yes.
They rented out that whole theater, and they brought all the people that were connected to them and families that were connected to them and played that one movie, Music and Me. And if you've not seen that movie, it's a story that was put together by Dan Cohen, who is a social worker out of New York, and really found that connection to Alzheimer's and dementia patients that live in this world of silence.
Yeah.
And some of them stop speaking for years, but you put the headset on and you start playing music from their generation, and they come alive.
It's amazing. You sing, "You Are My Sunshine," "Take Me Out to the Ballpark," "A Christmas Carol," "Happy Birthday." The gift of speech comes back.
Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing how we are wired.
And then the other thing that's amazing is they have this lucidness afterwards.
Yes.
And it may be like for a minute, it may be 5, but they're present, and then they slip back.
Yeah. But
So
they get to see their loved one, family member.
In that moment.
Yes.
Oh, I got chills. Yeah. You know, we talk a lot about Hospice of the Valley. You have a very easy website to go to. It's HOV.org.
Yep.
And we're not talking about the high occupancy vehicle lane on the freeway. We're talking HOV, Hospice of the Valley, HOV.org, or you can call 602-530-6900. And, you know, we just scratched the surface of some of the things that you guys do. And, you know, I think it's amazing the gift that we can help people through this journey and this journey called life. And it doesn't have to be so vinyl, so morbid. I mean, the gifts that you have can just keep people at peace and keep them in the proper frame of mind and loving that person. And I mean, together, home care, hospice, and some of the other ancillary services allow for those families to be present with their loved ones.
Yeah, it's a gift of love and dignity and comfort and compassion. And when you gave that phone number out, I just want folks to know that it's 24/7. So call us at 3 in the morning. It is 365 days a year. Call us on Christmas, and you'll always be able to talk to a nurse.
We talked about children in the opening, and we talked about how you are there for those families, even if somebody gives a stillbirth, and you're helping them through that journey. And then there's also those that do give birth to children that have major defects, birth defects, both mentally, behaviorally, if you would, as well as physically. You guys helped start an incredible not-for-profit here in our valley called Ryan House.
We helped Ryan House get started, and we still partner with them, and they provide respite, so a break for families with children who are medically fragile. We also have our hospice kids there. Most of our hospice kids want to be at home, but that is available for them if they want to be at Ryan House. And then, of course, we have hospice patients that are adults up on the second floor of Ryan House. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place to embrace families with children who have life-limiting illnesses.
We had Alyssa Crockett on here last year, and she's an amazing person, and she went into the details, the depths of which has been accomplished in such a short period.
Yes.
And really, going back to the village, I mean, it really takes a village, and Hospice of the Valley has helped them so much, and our communities helped them so much. It's just a great service that we have for our community. I can't believe we're up against a break. Lindsay, we got one more segment.
Okay.
So, I want to make sure we touch on all the great things that Hospice of the Valley and Lindsay Cooney are doing here in the Phoenix metropolitan market. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. And I've got Lindsay Cooney here in the studio, and we're talking hospice and Hospice of the Valley and the great work that they're doing here in the community. We're up against our break. We're break number 3. We got segment number 4 coming right up. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're on our 4th segment. And I've got Lindsay Cooney in the studio, Director of Community Engagement from Hospice of the Valley. And we've been talking about all the incredible things that Hospice of the Valley has been doing here in the community for 40 years.
Yes, this is our 40th
40
year.
years.
Can you believe that?
I mean, it is amazing that you guys have been around. And hospice hasn't been around that long. It's interesting because
in this country,
this country,
yes, and England is where it started.
Right.
But in 40 years to never have turned someone away, that to me is the most. That kind of tells you what's in the DNA.
Right. And I will tell you, I've had the privilege of caring for an individual here in town who is no longer with us, and at 103 years old, he passed away. But this gentleman was. Believe it or not, he was very modest. He was one of the impetus to create hospice here in the valley, or hospice in the country, I meant to say. So he talks about how Cicely Saunders, Dame Cicely Saunders, came over to visit with him. He was the head of neurology for Mass General in Boston, Massachusetts for 40 years. He taught psychiatry. I said neurology, psychiatry. He taught psychiatry at Harvard Medical School for 35 years. And he was an expert in a thing called thanology. And thanology is something...
Study of death, right?
That's right. I didn't know what it was. Lindsay, you knew what it was. I had to look it up. And he had written books on it. So Dame Cicely Saunders came over to see if he would help her create hospice here. And he said, you know what, that's not something I'm really interested in, but there's a young lady at Yale, her name's Florence Wald, that you should go visit. And that was like in 1970 or 71. In 1972, Yale University started their very first hospice. And I had the privilege of caring for this gentleman, and what a great honor. And I had him sitting right where you were at 103 years old.
Oh, wow. What an experience.
It is an experience. And, you know, I want to get back and talk about Hospice of the Valley. And you guys do some incredible things. And, you know, one of the things that you shared with me, and it's something that everyone goes through, and they all deal with it very differently when they deal with death, is grief and how they grieve. And I want you to share with our listening audience the grief program that you have here for our community.
Well, you know, when you say hospice, you think of the journey till your loved one is gone. But then the grief journey starts all over again, right? Because you're kind of grieving while your loved one is dying, because you know it's a goodbye. And forever, how long that takes. Every moment you want it to matter. And then suddenly they're gone, and you are ripped open again, and you have despair, and you don't know how you're going to go on, and will I ever experience joy again?
And everyone deals with it differently.
Every one of us, and we're all going to lose people we love.
Right.
And when you can have someone support you and also share and learn from people who have traveled that journey before you, as you do in grief support groups, and you realize I'm not alone. This person went through something as bad as me, maybe even worse. And here they are 6 months later and a year later and 2 years later, and they're healed. I can get there. It makes such a difference. And if you're a family and say you lose a child or you lose an adult and your children are grieving, as a parent, you're so bereft, you don't have what it takes to help your child grieve because you're grieving. So we have the New Songs Center for Grieving Children, which is open to all. It is no cost, helps families go through that grief because we can help the children, the young adults, and we can help the grown-ups, the adults.
Love it. I love it. And you're right. It doesn't end for that person at the time of passing. It continues. And I know my mother-in-law went through it, and, you know, she grieved very differently than my wife and I ever expected to, and it took her a long time to get to a place where she could be more herself.
Yeah.
And we have to be, you know, very respectful of that. But as our listening audience is listening right now, if you know someone that's going through this, and you know that there's lots of tears and, you know, but beyond the tears, you have people that don't engage. They want to stay at home. You know, they're more recluse. Call Hospice of the Valley. They can help you.
Well, and I want to make it clear so everyone understands that we're not just talking about the bereavement that happens when you're a patient of Hospice of the Valley. We have grief support groups, and New Song Center for Grieving Children is open to everyone in our community, whether or not Hospice of the Valley has ever cared for anyone in your family. And those programs are no cost. So you don't pay for that grief counseling. So, right, Bob, if your next door neighbor has experienced a death in the family and they weren't a hospice patient, they can come to our grief support groups, and they are every night at different areas all over the valley. So they are valley-wide to make it convenient for someone, and all that info's on our website.
Yeah, I'm looking
or just call us, and we'll tell you which one is closest to you. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on the website.
We even have a pet loss grief support group. So
I was just going to ask you that.
Yes. So
because they are members of the family.
Of course. And just think of someone who maybe doesn't have a spouse or children.
Right.
And their dog is their whole life, or their cat. And after 20 or 15 or however long some of these cats live, passes away, you're alone, and that's devastating.
I have chills. I mean, I've had a chance to see the work that your volunteers do, the clinicians do. I mean, it is amazing work that you guys are doing in our community and helping people get through this process and help them be them again, be me again, and that's
feel whole again.
Yeah, whole again. That's so important. So as we wrap up, there's something you guys do every year, and it's usually the week before Thanksgiving. Share with our listening audience what this is all about, because it is so moving what you guys do.
It is the Sunday night before Thanksgiving, when everyone is thinking about family, right? So if you've lost someone dear to you, you never forget them. So it's a chance to remember. It's a night of remembrance. We call it Light Up a Life. And it's at Steel Indian School Park. It starts at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it's over in about an hour. And it's a beautiful event that there's hot chocolate and cookies, and people come together. We have a whole stadium of seating and 2 giant screens where people have emailed us photos of their loved one. It is set to music on the night sky. We usually have a live choir. Last year it was the Brophy Men's Choir, those beautiful young voices.
Love it.
And it's just a night where we can all share and remember people we love and watch for that photo. And it's just...
And they're all holding candles, right?
Yes. And we have they're little
lights.
Little lights, yes. They
Right.
light up because we're lighting up for that life that is so precious that we'll never forget. So it's really a beautiful community event. We have 1,500 to 2,000 people there every year.
I'm just so moved. Lynn Sue, we're getting ready to wrap things up. I can't thank you enough for being here. Hospice of the Valley, HOV.org. Lynn Sue Cooney's the Director of Community Engagement. If you want to call them at 602-530-6900. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for letting me share.
Take care. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. Tune in next Friday at noon right here on Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit Cypress Home.